The most significant on-field rule change for the NFL in years was approved today. Welcome into your Denver Sports Daily for March 26th. Let's go.
Taking you through your morning headlines, it's Denver Sports Daily with Rachel V. Hill.
During the 2024 season, kickers will continue to kick from the 35-yard line, but the other 10 players on the kickoff team will line up at the receiving team's 40-yard line. At least 9 members of their return team will line up in a setup zone between the 35 and 30-yard lines. Up to 2 returners can line up in the landing zone between the goal line and the 20-yard line. No one other than the kicker and returners can move until the ball hits the ground or hits a player inside the landing zone. Touchbacks will be marked at the 30-yard line, and no fair catches will be allowed. In the event a team wants to attempt an onside kick, it will have to inform officials of its intent and would then be allowed to use the NFL's traditional formation. No surprise onside kicks will be allowed. Sean Payton spoke to the media yesterday when he said it was realistic for the Broncos to move up in the draft. Take a listen.
I think that's realistic. I think it's realistic. I know your report suggested otherwise, but it's realistic.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, no, it did. I would. I think it's realistic. What's hard to predict, though, is like what's on the receiving end. You know, I think it's good to be Monty today at Arizona, right? So it's hard to predict what that cost is. And yet, I certainly wouldn't say it's unrealistic, and we'll pay close attention to it.
I love how Sean Payton is calling out Ian Rappaport on his report saying that the Broncos weren't going to move up. And then he says, it's pretty realistic. However, in other news at the owners meeting, the Broncos approved a new turf for their practice center that will be installed this offseason. This will come along with the major renovations that they have planned for the field house. Greg Penner went on to say, we're going to replace it with a state-of-the-art artificial surface that's going to be better for our players with more padding and a different material. It is something they should really feel the impact of during our practices. I find this to be really interesting for one of two reasons. I'm like, okay, it can be really good for practices and that nature, but when you get back to an actual field, is it going to hurt a little bit more, or do you just get used to it and your adrenaline's pumping? Feels like if you make things a little bit easier, quote unquote, to say during practice, but then have to obviously ramp it up when you're out there actually playing, I feel like it can be a little like counteractive, but obviously they know a lot more than I do when it comes to the trainers and everything out there. So I will be interested to see kind of what the practice field ends up looking like. And I will definitely let you know when I step foot on it and let you know if it's actually like a lot bumpier too. So the NFL did ban hip drop tackles, and NFL owners decided to ban this when it is essentially the hip drop or a swivel tackle is when the defender behind the ball carrier wraps both hands around them and swivels his body and drops his hips into the runner's legs. The violation will result in an unnecessary roughness call and a 15-yard penalty. I know players are pissed about this all around. I think of players like Champ Bailey, who this was like the golden rule for them, I feel like. And I just think back to all of the crazy plays that I've watched, and you see somebody bringing him down, and this is exactly what they did. So I was very surprised. I would be very curious to know who the 3 coaches are or the 3 owners are that essentially said they didn't want to do this, and then everybody else agreed that they would be willing to ban it. This is going to cause a lot of flags to be thrown. I can already tell you right now, before the show started, we were all talking here in the studio about when you are learning football, this is like the number one way they teach you to tackle in football. And I just know that it is going to feel a lot like Kareem Jackson last year, where, there was one little change that was made, and all of a sudden we were seeing penalties, suspensions, fines, et cetera, et cetera. So I know there's going to be a lot more flags this upcoming year, and I'm going to be, a little annoyed at how many it'll probably delay the game and how many minutes it'll delay the game by. But I'm curious how you guys feel about this, because it's like the number one way you are taught to tackle. Even when I played powder puff football, like this is how they were like, okay, grab their, string or whatever it is, the flag, and then take them down that way. And I was like, okay, we can do that. But I don't know. I'm just kind of on this whole thing. I feel like a lot of stuff came out of the owners meetings that I'm not exactly hyped about, but we'll see what the 2024 season look like. But this next Mile High Minute is presented to you by Smashburger, because the Nuggets took down a shorthanded Grizzlies in a dominating fashion last night, 128-103. There were a whole lot of buckets from a whole lot of guys. You got Christian Brown with 17 points, MPJ 11, and then of course you got to come down to Nikola Jokic, 29 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists, 1 block, and 3 steals. It was an absolute domination when it came to just about everybody on the Nuggets team being able to put on some sort of show. The Nuggets advanced to 15-2 since the All-Star break, where they continue to hold the number 1 seed. Now we will look ahead to some basketball because, yes, even though CSU and CU men's teams are out, the Iowa women's basketball team advanced to the Sweet 16 to face CU women's team. So Caitlin Clark led Iowa to the win, recording 32 points and 8 rebounds last night. And CU advanced on Sunday, beating the Kansas State Wildcats 63-50 on the road. This Saturday, the 30th, we will get the rematch of last year's Sweet 16 matchup where CU was defeated 87-73. I'm really excited for this. Honestly, I'm a huge Caitlin Clark fan. I just found out that some people are not, but I think this game is going to be so intense. And honestly, I think there's a shot. If Iowa plays the way they played last night, CU can possibly advance, which means they would probably take on LSU, which again would be just another huge matchup. So this week, they should definitely have your TVs on watching CU, hopefully take on 2 of the best teams in college basketball. It is an Avalanche game day, and the Avs will be taking on the Montreal Canadiens tonight at 7 p.m. If the Avs win tonight, they will move up to first in the conference. Make sure you tune into that one. It should be a relatively good game. You see the Canadiens sitting at 26-32-12, the Avalanche 46-20-5. We mentioned it yesterday, but there are some quarterback pro days this week. LSU's Jaden Daniels on Wednesday, North Carolina's Drake May on Thursday, and Washington's Michael Penix Jr. on Thursday as well. Going back to the NBA real quick. They are investigating Dante Porter for gambling. The Toronto Raptors removed the center from their lineup before their game on Monday night. He's being investigated due to an abnormal amount of prop bets placed on him on multiple different nights, including points, rebounds, assists, and three-pointers. Dante Porter is Michael Porter Jr.'s brother and has appeared in 26 games for the Raptors this season. Michael Porter Jr. decided to not speak to the media post-game last night after the Nuggets beat the Grizzlies. Last one for you here on this Tuesday. Otani finally spoke out after he was tied to gambling, and he said, "I would never bet on baseball or any other sports or have never asked somebody to do it on my behalf. I have never went through a bookmaker to bet on sports." He goes on to say this comes after his interpreter was accused of perpetrating a massive theft. So he essentially did an entire press conference yesterday, and people thought that they were going to be able to ask questions, and they said no questions. He's going to say a statement, and that is it. So I know a lot of people have been very interested in that story. So it's really interesting to kind of see how gambling is taking over a lot of the headlining stories and what that's going to look like for the future of sports as well. I know this was definitely one of the concerns a lot of people had when they were just kind of starting to release sports betting, but here we are, a way to make money, and it'll be interesting to see about Michael Porter Jr.'s brother. Like, you could have just ruined your career one way or another. So interesting enough. I always love reading your guys' comments on this Tuesday. Good morning, Rachel. Good morning. I love having you guys hang out with me each and every single day. So thank you so much. Let's see. Nate trying for 35 straight home point streak tonight against the Habs. Yes, indeed. I am so excited for Nathan MacKinnon. History is being made literally every single night, it feels like, and he is so close to catching Wayne Gretzky's point streak, and it's just so fun. It's so fun to watch him. It's so fun to watch him and Jonathan Drouin reunite, and it's just the entire team feels like a different team than they were before the trade deadline, and I'm really, really hopeful that they're going to make a huge push and just continue this streak. But the main thing is, for me, don't wear yourself out too much in the regular season. Get the important wins, but obviously you want to keep the hot streak going, but just make sure that the time the playoffs come that you feel well rested, because we all know that it can be just absolutely grueling. So last one I want to get to, and I feel like this is one of the things that a lot of people are going to be talking about with all of the new rules. NFL is getting too soft. It does, in a way, feel like that. Obviously, safety is such a number one priority. And I don't necessarily like using the word soft because football is one of the hardest sports, much like hockey, much like many other things. But it does just feel like they're taking away a lot of things that make football football. And I know that's where a lot of people are going to get frustrated. So let me know in the comments how you're feeling about all of the new rule changes and what those are looking like. I'm very curious, to be completely honest. And I would love to read some of your guys' comments over on Coffee Break. Andrew Mason's going to be joining me here in just a little bit, 12 p.m. Come hang out with us. We're going to be sitting down talking about all the new rule changes. And he is also down there in Florida. So hearing what he thought from Damani Leach on the new uniforms, hearing from George Payton on Russell Wilson, Sean Payton, etc. So make sure you come hang out with us, and we will see you guys then. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and get back to work.